Hello everybody, welcome back. This is another part of the Christmas quilt finish what I started series. So just a reminder of where we are. So far I have 47 of these blocks, a decent roll of the piano key border, a decent size strip of the crumb quilt, and still a bowl of scraps. I mean, there will be scraps that have to be thrown away, but I do my best not to. So yesterday I went and got fabric for the sashing for in between the blocks, and I got this bright green. So now I'm just trying to figure out how much space I want for the sashing, which is the strips between the blocks, how much I'd like between them. I'm thinking an inch, but I'm just going to line it up and see what an inch looks like and whether I want to allow 1.5 inches. So that's probably more than an inch. I've got my blocks just spaced out on top of the fabric just to give me an idea. Ooh, that's 2 inches. I moved it into an inch. It may look a little narrow. Yeah, there's an inch there. So I think I'm going to go for 2 inches. That's where I naturally put it, and it seems to look about right. So that means that I need to cut this into strips, and to allow for 2 inches between, I need to cut 2.5 inches, because you always allow for 1/4 inch seam. It's going to be quite a bit of sewing, because what you do is you attach the strips between the blocks, and then you attach a long strip at the rows. So what I need to do is decide how I'm going to position my rows of blocks. So that will take a while, and I will have to lay that out, but that's the next step now, is to order my blocks, see how big this is going to come out. Sorry for the change of light. It's a Sunday afternoon in the middle of June. It's not even 3 p.m. and it is so dark outside. So I have laid out, I don't know if you can see that. I just lay out my blocks like this along on the green fabric so I can see what I'm doing, and I've just laid them out into rows of 5. And I will have 8 rows of 5 blocks. So it will be an oblong quilt. So I'll have 8 rows of 5 blocks with the green in between. There's my piles of blocks all pinned together. I just pin them together and then I can stitch them in order. So time to pin these together. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about cutting my fabric before I do. I bought this fabric yesterday from a shop that doesn't use a rotary cutter to cut their fabric, but tears it. That will sort of technically give you a straight edge. And so, you know, there are shops that think that that's all right. But when you look, you can see that it doesn't always give you a completely straight edge to go on. In fact, when you bought your fabric, the only straight edge you can rely on is the selvage. So don't rely on what the shop has done as being straight, because they have to do it quick. And, you know, even if they're rotary cutting it, they may not have lined it up properly. Always check your edges yourself. And as I said, the only straight edge you can rely on is the selvage. Now, this particular fabric was cut a bit wonky on it was folded a bit wonky on the bolt. So that's why I've just pinned my selvage edges together to make sure that I can line them up on my board and get my straight edge. And I'm gonna rotary cut. You know, there's a lot of strips to cut, and it will take you forever with scissors. So I will show that in a minute. But one other tip for rotary cutting is to make sure you always have the same make board and ruler, because while they're the same inches. You know, they're all made slightly differently. They all have their lines differently. So I use OmniGrid and that's what I stick to. Okay, I'll just set up for cutting and show you how I do that. So here I am ready to cut. And all I'm looking at here in this first instance is that my selvage edge is lined up straight along one of the lines on my mat. I'm not worried about the straightness of any other edge, because what I am going to do is straighten up this torn edge. So I know that my selvage is straight, so by folding my fabric and lying it out, I know that I've got a straight edge there. So then I can take my ruler, line it up along the line on my board. I don't always use the lines on my board, I mainly use the lines on my ruler, but to straighten the edge, that's an exception. You need to push this ruler down very firmly. This is a really sharp blade, and you cut through your fabric, walking your fingers up so that you don't shift your ruler. Now, my fabric is folded, so you might have to go again. So now you can see I have two straight edges, which will mean cutting my strips. I can be sure that I've got straight strips. So I've got this straight edge and this straight edge, so I can just line them up. Now I need to turn myself around. So what I tend to do is walk to the other side of the table, because now I want to use the more accurate lines on my ruler to measure my 2.5 inch strips. So I'm working from this edge now. I'm just going to pull that away slightly. There we go. Can you still see? Yeah. So I've got my ruler. This ruler is a 3 inch wide ruler. You can see that. So I want to end up with 2 inch strips between my blocks. I'll be using 1/4 inch each time on each side for my seam allowance. So I need 2.5 to get my 2 inch strips in the middle. Now I have pinned this, so I just need to remove that pin. So I take my ruler, I place it on my fabric and line it up to the 2.5 inch mark. Do the same thing again. Place my hand down, open my blade and walk my fingers and my blade together. And there is a little bit there that's caught. I think I may need a new blade in my cutter. And there is a 2.5 inch strip of fabric. So all of the squares are sewn together now with a strip of the green. There's a lot of them. Hard to get a video of it properly. And now I'll just try and... They need to be ironed and straightened where there's sometimes little extra bits from the sewing. So they now need to be ironed and straightened, and I'll come back and show you the straightening of one in a second. So here I am with my strips all pressed, and I'm just straightening the edges, cutting all these extra bits off. So how I'm going to do that is I've got my self-healing mat, my ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm just lining up between two blocks and straightening the edge. I'm not really measuring. I was careful when I put the blocks together, they've already been squared up, so it's just a matter of getting rid of the extra. There will be times like there where you need to sort of take the average, and that's fine. You can do that. You just need to go along like that, straighten it up. You get, ironically, a lot more scraps for that scrap bag. So then you just flip it over and start again on the other side. I might try and get you a bit closer so you can see more clearly what I'm doing. So I've just come around to the other side of the table to try and give you a closer view of how I'm doing this. I think you're in a bit closer. So if you can just see the edge here, I'm taking a straight line and trimming to match. I'll just do that again on the next bit. So I've got my straight edge. I'm lining up my ruler to the edge of this one and to the edge of this one. Just taking the excess of the sashing off. And one more time, lining up my ruler to the edge of this one, to the edge of that one, and straightening it up. So now I have to go through and do that to all of my strips. Okay, so now my block strips are all pressed and trimmed, and I need to join them, sashing in between like I did for the small blocks. So they'll be joined like that. But I need to go through my strips and lay them out and decide on the order. Because just as I've randomly laid these out, you can see here that I've got two that have the same fabric and that'll end up next to each other. Well, I probably don't want that in the finished quilt. So I need to just lay them out on the floor, decide on my order, and then join them. And I just literally join them with these strips. So I'll come back when that's done. So here we are, and as you can see, I've laid them out. I think Luna approves. To where there's nothing that's pulling or sticking out as being too close together. I'm going to have to get them off the floor pretty quickly. So that's just my process for sorting out how I'm going to lay it out. So now, as you can see, I've got them sewn together into 2 strip sets, and then I will be joining the 2 strip sets together. It's the traditional way of doing it. You don't have to, but it helps your quilt get less pushed out of square by the feed dogs in the machine. But, you know, don't let something like that put you off making your quilt, because I don't think any quilt has ever come out completely square. So now these need to be pressed, and then I will be joining the 2s. So the proper way of doing it would be to join it into twos as I have, and then join two of these together and then join it up the middle. I might do that, I might not. There are as many ways as making a quilt as there are quilters, and I'm not really one for shoulds. I just would rather do it the way that gets it done. We'll see if I'm actually able to get this stitched together. Someone wants to help me. Don't you, Luna? Are you ignoring me? Luna? She's very interested. Yes, well, she's actually now curled up to sleep on it while it's under the machine. I'm not sure I'm going to get anywhere fast. I better move her, though I feel really cruel. So here we are. It's all joined now and pressed, although as normal with quilts, the pressing never looks like it's pressed for very long. So I've got some decisions to make on borders and bits to sort out. But I think that's probably going to be the end of this video for this time because it's getting quite long. And I'll start again with the rest of the process and upload another video in a few days. Thank you very much for watching. Do like and subscribe if you want to see how this turns out and any of my other trying to get stuff finished projects. Thank you. Bye.